Welcome back to the Woven Energy Podcast with me, Joseph Sikora, and Damon Smith. We're here once again to talk about shamanism from the ground up. Now, this is going to be one of our, a cross between a general interest episode and a shamanic technique episode, I guess, because we're going to be exploring automatic writing from a shamanic perspective. And what I thought would be a really cool idea would be to explore automatic writing, but from the perspective of the stages of shamanic technique. So we could kind of go through each of the stages, exploring this as a shamanic technique and how it applies to each of those stages. I thought that would be a really interesting way to have a look at it. So, Damon,
hey, mate.
How are you doing?
Yeah, good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm very good. So I think the first thing to do really is to give an overview of what automatic writing is, because I think maybe a few people may be a little bit surprised to realize that it's actually got its roots in shamanic technique, and it's understood to be a shamanic technique. So could you give a bit of an introduction?
Well, with a lot of these things, it's the same, isn't it? You know, the idea of automatic writing has been associated with, I don't know what term we use for, I don't know, we've got hippy-dippy, new age, shamanism type of Western stuff for quite a long time, probably since the 60s. Or even earlier, if you go back to the 19th century, you know, there's some stuff going on in the Western tradition with automatic writing. I'm not talking about legitimate automatic writing. I'm talking about, imagine a bunch of wealthy Victorians in the drawing room trying to scare each other, you know, with, communing with demons and stuff like this. And it's sort of like
the old Ouija board.
Associated with, yeah, exactly. It's Ouija board shamanism, you know. And that stuff, on the whole, is...
We'll have to remember that one. Ouija board shamanism. I quite like that term.
It's utter nonsense, you know. And I think we were talking about last time a little bit about it. It's associated with the imaginary friend stuff, you know. I have a bunch of imaginary friends who can be angels or demons or, you know, spirit guides or spirit animals. And I have these relationships with them. And then I go into a trance, in inverted commas, and my imaginary friends channel what they want to say through me onto a bit of paper, which I scribble all over, and sometimes I can make out the things I'm writing, and sometimes I can't. That's nonsense. All that stuff is utter nonsense. It's just imagination stuff, and it's really
even if the person's in a trance, and even if the person it feels like they're in a trance, it's the miasma coming through, right? That kind of.
And this is the problem with writing.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the problem with writing. Writing is closely associated with language, and language is not really an aid to shamanism. It's a serious hindrance. So to choose a shamanic technique that's associated with written language, you know, it's not my flavor of the month or flavor of the year or flavor of my life, automatic writing. Having said that, it can be and has been done as a legitimate.
Well, I was going to ask you as well, because like the tribes, I mean, I imagine that this shamanic technique has been around since way before writing even existed. And something that does spring to mind in the similar vein is, of course, the speaking in tongues and that kind of thing. And I would put to you and ask you, are they a similar thing?
Yes, yes.
Except you just write it down rather than you speak it out loud. But yeah, I totally get, you know, language is not, I mean, we have to convey this stuff in allegory to start with, let alone just,
yeah. So here's a slightly biased opinion. You know, I've said level 3 technique, all the different shamanic approaches are equally valid and equally useful, and, you know, all of these things. My probably, you know, miasmatic opinion is that spirit dance is far superior to automatic writing as a shamanic technique. I'm sorry, but it is. And the reason is what we've always talked about. It's the main pitfall of learning shamanism. Spirit dance is much less likely to incorporate aspects It's not that it's not likely to incorporate aspects of the miasma, but the miasma is built on language. And so if you choose a language-based technique and the same with Ma'aza, and speaking in tongues and these type of shamanic techniques, there are other types of shamanic techniques that use language. All of those things are heavily associated with language upon which the miasma is virtually founded. So
you're making a very hard job even harder.
Exactly. But that's not to say that it can't be done in a legitimately shamanic kind of way. And I guess we'll talk about how that might be done. I'd also hasten to add, although I have tried this, I'm verging on proud to say it's not a major part of my shamanic technique that I practice myself. So I'm no great exponent of this stuff, though I did try it in my misspent youth. And I've got a few tips for anybody who might want to try it in terms of what you might do to try to alleviate or mitigate some of the miasmatic aspects that automatic writing has. So if we look at it from the point of view of the 7 level stages, whatever you want to call them, that we've been talking about, the first 2 for automatic writing would be identical. Bagtamste Savage, practice for Chilisti, and any of the Chilisti exercises that we've given, and the many Chilisti exercises that we've given in the podcast to date would create just a fine basis for automatic writing. And Amskar likewise. Amskar, that sort of lightweight observation of self skill, understanding what's going on inside your body without affecting what's going on inside your body, the closest bit of nature to you, that would just be the same as well. And we give a ton of stuff for that as well. So it's really level 3, where the things that you would do would be different. The act of writing, and first of all, you can also imagine automatic typing, can't you, on a keyboard or something,
So there's no, that surprises me, because I came thinking that stage 1 would be exactly the same, but stage 2 is the same as well. So there's no automatic writing
except
stage 2 level.
That you would start to apply. It's going to be difficult at stage 2 level for a reason. I'm going to give a reason in a second, but just say you were using the Latin alphabet. You're using the letters A through Z, and you're a Westerner and you're very familiar with those letters, or you're Japanese and you're using hiragana, a very familiar syllabic alphabet to you, or you're Mongol using Mongol script. If you're using an alphabet that's a writing system that's very familiar to you, then some aspects of the automatic writing are going to be easier, but that is also the familiarity and the closeness to the miasma is going to amplify all the problems as well. So my view is that if you really wanted to try something like this, you should be picking up some other writing system that you're not familiar with, concurrent with your practice of shamanism. Yeah. So what I mean is,
so as an analogy then, something like learning the movements for the spirit dance is one thing. Learning a new way of writing a language would be the equivalent for automatic writing, because you're not familiar with it. It doesn't have all the baggage that comes with it. So choosing something completely new would be a good way to.
Not exactly. What I mean is, you could. First of all, what language is going to come out is what language is going to come out in automatic writing. That's not something you have any choice over, yeah? So it's very likely to be whatever language you're most familiar with. If you're equally fluent in 2 different languages, then it's going to be a mix of those 2 languages that comes out in general. So that's not really what I mean. What I mean is, you should pick up a new writing system to write whatever comes out, which will probably be your language or what you're familiar with, yeah? But you shouldn't be using the writing system that you're familiar with to write that language. Does that make sense?
Okay, I think I get it. Yeah. So
the point
you're
is,
still
you
using your
don't get
language,
to
but
choose. You don't get to choose what comes out in automatic writing. You get no choice of that at all. But you do, to a certain extent, at level 3, get to choose, if you practice your level 3 technique well for automatic writing, you do get to choose, because the each of the techniques for your level 3 practice is going to be the writing of a character symbol or phonetic symbol or whatever it is. That's going to be your practice. Your very early level 3 technique will be to, pick a single symbol of your chosen writing system and to practice that ad infinitum until you can write it in a state of chillicity without thinking about it. And then your next technique would be to add another symbol for another sound aspect of any language that's going to come out, and to practice writing that. Yeah. So that would be your second technique, and then gradually.
Can I ask a Joe silly question? Right, because you're writing it down. Would it be? I'm already questioning my own question, but would it be easier to kind of understand what you've come back from the journey with if it's all written down there?
No, there's no journey here, mate. We're talking about level 3. We're nowhere near level 6 here.
Yeah. No, okay.
Yeah,
but my point was because the whole. Okay. Maybe we'll come on to the journey and talk about that. But when you go on that journey, you bring back that kind of feeling of the answer to whatever the question was that you had. It's a feeling, right? You have nothing tangible, but if you write it down, you've got something tangible. But maybe what you've written down is complete nonsense to a logical and rational mind anyway. So
yeah. Well, you're jumping too far ahead, mate. I think we just need to build up the
like
picture.
I said, a random thought.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So let's just keep going. But anyway, I'm just gonna. I don't know if you want to cut this bit out or not, but I'm going to close the window because somebody started up a very noisy piece of machinery outside. Give me 2 seconds.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. No worries.
But it's totally quiet all morning. Anyway, so let's just review. Chillicity is chillicity. Any of the chillicity exercises will do. Amskar I would just use the same kind of Amskar exercises we've been doing. You could do some Amskar in terms of understanding what's happening in your body while you're writing in a familiar writing system. But like I said, using a familiar writing system is a really bad idea when you're learning to do automatic writing. It's not saying it can't be done, but your Burchikartarate is going to have to be colossally titanic to get around the problems associated with that. The level 3 technique would be, each of the techniques would effectively be a character or symbol to write whatever it is that comes out. Now, obviously, it's much better to use something that represents sounds than pictograms. You can imagine a sort of early cuneiform automatic writing. That would be crazy. I mean, the early cuneiform was one of the most planned things ever. It's the first writing system that we know about. They make these clay tablets, and then they use a shaped reed to press shapes into them that represent a sheep or a goat or whatever. You could do it with that, but it's going to be the preparation and the planning that goes into something like that is counter to any kind of flow or weave that you want to create. So I would stay away from anything like that, picture symbols and that type of stuff. It should be something that represents sounds and whatever sounds that come out. I'm not recommending it, but the symbol system that I used when I was practicing this stuff back in the day, and we are talking about like 20 years ago, is a thing called Theban, and you can look it up. It's from a guy called Johannes Trithemius originally, and he attributed it to early times, and who knows where it actually came from. But it sort of maps to the Latin alphabet, but it's very different from the Latin alphabet, and that's an advantage, not a disadvantage. And also the way that it's shaped, it tends to leave your hand moving towards the point where the next, as you complete one character, it tends to leave your hand moving in the direction where the next character is going to start. So that's quite helpful.
Yeah, so the general script of it aids a flow.
It has a sort of flow to it, yeah. Not always, but in general. And so you can look at it. But I'm not recommending it so much as saying that that's what I used when I tried this.
Well, what about like
stuff.
Japanese calligraphy? Because that kind of, especially to a Westerner who it would be completely foreign to, but that has a certain flow and an artistic.
So here's the thing, right? So Miki, the shamaness we talk about an awful lot on this podcast, she used automatic writing, and she deliberately chose not to use the kanji system. I don't know if she chose not to, but anyway, for whatever reason, she didn't use the kanji system, the Japanese pictorial character system that come from China originally. She used pretty much purely syllabic hiragana in her automatic writings, and that obviously enabled a flow. So I think that, she didn't give any explanation of that I'm aware of, but this is what I think it's about. You need to be able to do this without thinking about it. And if you're doing a sort of Plato-esque catalogue of the world, storing huge numbers of characters, you want that to flow without thought, that's going to be awfully difficult. And another thing is, I think learning a writing system like Theban or one of the many things that are similar to it, it's something aside from your ordinary everyday experience. It's something that you could keep, for instance, exclusively for your automatic writing and not use it for any other kind of writing that you do. That would then become part of a very solid shamanic technique that isn't so much miasma associated, whereas your writing that you use in your everyday life is tied in with the miasma, that you use that writing as, you're signing documents and forms and all sorts of stuff, or typing on the keyboard, writing essays. All of that stuff is already tightly integrated with the miasma inside your spirit. Picking up something completely new and reserving it exclusively for your automatic writing would be a sensible approach, in my opinion. Now, Miki, sure, she knew hiragana before she started using that in her automatic writing, but the fact that she didn't use kanji there's other issues around that. Historical reasons have been given for that. Like, women didn't use kanji. That's not true, and she certainly did know kanji. But didn't use them. So you want something that's going to flow. That's the truth. And, however good you are at, memorizing, I hate to think, my teacher was very literate in Japanese. He's going to certainly know more than 10,000 different characters. Could he make 10,000 characters flow without thought? I very much doubt it. I very much doubt it,
Yeah.
So that's would be my recommendation. So what I'm saying is, at the AMSCA level, sure, you could take an existing writing system that you're familiar with, do some writing in that system, and use your AMSCA level technique to see the changes that the writing is invoking in your body. But I don't think that's all that helpful, frankly. That's my opinion on it. And like
it's so funny talking about this stuff. Immediately, I'm just thinking, I'm not going to explore automatic writing. It's not for me. But I've often thought that language itself is very baseline. You see a lot of these people that descend into misunderstandings and arguments and stuff, especially online these days, and people are often they're just communicating on the baseline completely. It leaves no room for anything else. And I know that's not wholly what we're doing here, because we are kind of entering into a bit of a trance, but it strikes me that spirit dance is better in a sense, because immediately it has that off your baseline aspect to it. Immediately you're being physical, you're moving, you're exploring your body in a physical way.
Yeah.
And that by definition will draw you away from your baseline and closer to nature.
So here's exactly what's difficult about automatic writing, because you need to pull that stuff into automatic writing. It's your body, it's your physical chelicity that's going to be propelling that writing out of the end of your writing implement. We haven't talked about writing implements next, but you definitely, again, you want something that's going to flow. The automatic writings of the shamans of the 19th century was often referred to as ofudasaki. Now, you might see people referring to the ofudasaki, which is a collection of Miki's writings.
Yeah.
But first of all, even for Miki, it wasn't just one thing. It was a collection of different things. But there were many ofudasakis at that time. Now, to give you an idea what automatic writing is like, the word ofudasaki is actually a really good one, because it means fude is a writing brush. Yeah. So you can see if it's a brush on paper with ink, your brush allows you to write very fluidly, which is definitely what you want with this stuff. I mean, there are types of pens that you can use that have a similar kind of, I mean, modern pens that you can use have a similar kind of flow to them. But you definitely want something that has flow. Nagare in Japanese, that the word fude means writing brush, and saki is the point or the tip, and o is like an honorific. So basically what it means is it's not you doing the writing, it's the point of the writing brush that's doing the writing, not you. And you, holistically, as part of nature, through your physical chelicity, are propelling the point of the writing brush as part of brush you, no gap between those. So it's not two words, it's one brush you, through that tip. So this is where a lot of work has to go in, because automatic writing is done correctly is a highly physical thing. And the body is totally engaged. The whole body is totally engaged in the writing. So it's not just a matter of you sat there with a piece of paper just doing random scribbles, as you see a lot of sort of, should we call them hippie types? You see them doing that type of thing just with a notebook, and they're not even moving. Their body's not even moving. You just see the hand going. That's all imagination stuff, yeah? You need to be fully in a state of chelicity, and you need to be fully engaged with what's going on. And you could see the effects at level 2 through the writing systems that you're familiar with, but I'm recommending that you don't use a writing system that you're familiar with. And if you already know Theban, pick something else. Use Japanese hiragana if you don't know it to write these things. Hiragana was designed with this kind of thing in mind. It's a beautiful flowing script. Or the the Mongolian writing system was designed with this kind of thing in mind. That's slightly shamanic writing systems. Use those things. The point is, I don't mean use those things to write Japanese and Mongolian. If you're an English speaker, use those things because it's English that's going to be coming out. Use those things to write English.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to make slight adaptations, So, for instance, if you're using Theban, you're not going to be able to write certain letters, like a J, but that's easy enough got round. You just write an I, like Jesus and Jesus in Latin. You just write an I instead of a J. So there's that type of thing, and use V's and W's. There's just a single letter, and you can double it up and stuff in Theban. But you can write Theban, you can write English in Theban quite easily, with only slight modifications that you don't really have to worry about once you've internalized them. So coming on to level 3, what would I do if I was going to be serious about automatic writing, bearing in mind that I'm not? I would practice with a letter, take A, and I would write that. I'd just start by writing that. This is the start of my level 3 technique. Writing that A is my first technique at level 3. So I would just write it over and over and over and over and over. And I wouldn't do a scribble that looks like and then somehow, I can see letters emerging out of the scribble that I'm writing. That's not the point of it. The point of it is I need a technique, just like I need a technique when I'm learning spirit dance. I need a dance movement that I need to internalize so that I can execute it well without thinking about it. When I'm confident that I can write the Theban character for A without thinking about it, I then add B to the mix. And I might write
It sounds fascinating, David.
B, yeah. Or I might be B. How many times? Maybe 10,000 if I was going to be serious about it. So I've written 10,000 A's, I've written 10,000 B's, and now I just go A, B, A, B, A, B, A, B, B, A, A, B, 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 A, B, B, B.
I think you're purposefully trying to put people off this one, aren't you?
I'm not, mate. I'm not. This is no different from learning spirit dance. I'm just telling you how you learn this in the same way that you learn spirit dance. Yeah. And then you want a good portfolio of technique. So you've got about 20-ish characters if you're taking Theban, 20-ish characters, or maybe 25. I don't know exactly how many there are, but the point is that adding the characters to your automatic writing ability, you need to be able to vary them and not decide what's coming next. Adding the characters to your automatic ability is no different from adding different dance moves into the weave. Do you follow what I mean? Different dance moves into the bujig. When you're doing your spirit dance, each of these characters is one of your dance movements, one of your dance energy changes. Yeah. And I would also do some maybe homolog or something as I'm doing it, but then you need syllables. This is why hiragana is really good for it, because you could go, you know, if like a hiragana form of English, you go ba, ka, ba, ka, 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 ba, ka, ka, ba, ka, ba, ka, 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 ba, ka, ka, like that. As you go, you know, and you would be writing those out. And probably saying the things at the same time. The problem with a letter-based thing is it makes the consonants very difficult to pronounce by themselves. But you can care for C or whatever you want, you know, for M. You can do it. But I would also try to engage a bit of homiluk. But obviously for homiluk, it's the vowels that really add to the character of it, you know, so you want to get them in. So maybe the first thing, ah, o, e, u, you know, and you could be writing the vowels out as your, you know, or saying that. The thing is, you don't choose whether you say it or write it, right? Say it. The two things happen concurrently if you're doing it well. And so that would be your level 3 technique. And then, of course, you want to create a weave. So, you know, this is going to be a lot of hard work if you're not, you know, if you're not serious about it. For me, the thing about spirit dance is it's so wonderful and engaging that although it's still a lot of hard work, it doesn't feel like hard work for me. You know what I mean? Because I love it. And it's like, you know, I've 10,000 hours on, you know, plus on that. I don't know exactly how many thousand hours it is, but it's a lot. Didn't feel like any kind of a chore at all. I think similar amount of effort on this is going to be. Is
there something in that the spirit dance offers you more options to explore other techniques once you've got to a certain stage with the spirit dance? Because it's like, and I want to do another episode like this on the shamanic drum, on the shaman's drum. But you could easily incorporate that into the spirit dance. It's kind of hard to think how you would incorporate a pen and paper into the spirit dance.
What, is you going around? No, you could do. I mean, it has been done. Some Japanese shamanism, the way you do it is you wear those. Have you seen those tabi boots? They have very soft bottoms, on very soft soles, and you have a massive sheet of paper on the floor and an enormous brush. And so you're literally moving around the floor, doing your spirit dance as you're brushing out the characters on the floor. So yeah, it's totally. I mean, it's not an easy thing to set up, but it's totally possible. Yeah, and quite a cool thing that I would quite enjoy that type of automatic writing. That'd be awesome. And so therefore, you're incorporating your spirit dance into your technique. Actually, I've been working on a little thing. That's the idea of it is to incorporate some of the aspects of different shamanic dance traditions, Miki's tradition, Hirotofuri, and what they know as the dance religion, the dancing religion in Japan as well, and some of the more restrained forms of Malaysian shamanism. To make a lighter weight form of spirit dance that you could do that with, that, you know, that doesn't have the big Mongolian, you know, heavy kind of bear-like postures and stuff in it. And the thing is, the kind of spirit dance I normally did, if you would rip the paper to shreds, you know, you would see rip it to shreds. But this thing that I've been working on, I call it sort of butterfly dance, working title. There's a cut down. What I was thinking was that I could start a little class somewhere and teach maybe some older people some spirit dance based on, it's largely based on the Miki system that was taught to me by my teacher, but with other aspects of different shamanic systems incorporated into it as well. But it doesn't require the kind of physicality that full-on spirit dance, the full-on kind of spirit dance that I do would probably, you know, older people, it might give them some injuries and stuff, I don't know.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of thing I was thinking of, something more lightweight. And I call it butterfly dance because it's supposed to be lightweight like a butterfly. That's the idea. And also I put some of the sort of Ainu crane dance into that as well. And I'm still working on it because, again, for me, because I've done so much spirit dance, the hard thing is taking the things out that I know how, the big bear-like movements and stuff like that, the big eagle movements, the very powerful, the tiger movements and all that kind of stuff, and snake as well to a certain extent. It's very hard to take them out without thinking about taking them out. So I'm kind of doing a reverse spirit dance at the moment. I'm trying to take out things so I can do something. It's like, if you like, a second spirit dance for me, a more lighter weight one, maybe from my old age as well, when I'm not able to do all this stuff anymore. That's my idea, and I've been working on that a bit. And that you could definitely do standing on a piece of paper with a big brush, writing on the floor. And that would be very cool. In fact, I fancy doing that. So I just need to find a big enough area that I can put a big bit of paper down. But yeah, so that would be your level 3 technique. And then obviously the idea is then to weave these characters together.
I'm just a little bit confused on something. So, because I mentioned earlier about the journey and it's like,
we're miles away from the journey, mate.
I know.
The journey.
My question is like, well, what would you be writing? In stage 3. So it could just be anything that comes out. Squiggles.
No, if you're doing it right, it would be what comes out. No. That's a mistake. That's a misconception. You don't write squiggles. If you look at Miki's automatic writings, for instance, her Fudosaki, which are there's a lot of them, okay?
Yeah.
The one thing that there is not is any mistake. There's no random squiggle that doesn't mean anything. There's no, it's all proper hiragana. Yeah,
so I guess
system.
An extension of my question then would be, given those works, the Fudosaki, what stage was that written? That might help me make sense
7.
of it. 7. Right. Okay. So right at the end. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I mean, she's the reason I've been so interested in Miki in my life is that very few shamans achieve the Nekdel. And she's a person that, by all accounts, I never met her, but by all accounts and by the things that she managed to achieve in her life, and there are multiple sources verifying these things, that she seems to have acquired a considerable level of ability at the Nekdel level, at level 7. And yes, that was where her automatic writing was, her famous automatic writings. But who knows what she did in order to get there. But the writings that she did that we have from her were late in life. They were not at the end of, but towards the end of a very long shamanic journey. Yeah. So we're seeing a shaman fully fledged. We have stories about her younger life and things that she did and she was engaged in. But what we don't have is early examples of her automatic writing. We only have the late examples when she was fully fledged, full-on shaman.
So automatic writing at stage 3 would be, it would still be writing, but it would be undirected. It wouldn't have a specific purpose. It would just be experimentation. It would be play. It would be...
Well, the purpose of stage 3 is to acquire technique to the point that you can do it without thinking about it. So my point is that that doesn't matter at stage 3. You're just practicing. The foundation of stage 3 with automatic writing would be practicing writing whatever characters you're going to use for your automatic writing, so that you can do a rich variety of them without thinking about any of them or thinking about the transitions. So if you're thinking about what it is you should be writing, then that's really a wrong approach. You're writing what comes out. That makes sense?
That makes sense. That's making more sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And of course, what comes out if this is why I keep recommending against using your regular writing system. If you use your regular writing system, what's going to come out are the words of your imaginary friend, which is invented by you. Yeah. That's what we don't want. Yeah. We definitely don't want you to, my spirit guide tells me that, as long as I worship the heavenly crystal or something today, then everything will be all right. All that kind of stuff. You don't want any nonsense like that. The thing is, I can't come up with this stuff, but I want to read it on things. I used to subscribe to that magazine Kindred Spirit many years ago. I used to read that thing, and it's just like I know that kind of speech when I see it and when I hear it. That
Ouija
kind
board
of thing.
shamanism.
But I can't generate it. I really can't generate it because it's so miasma. My body sort of cringes, But yeah, so get your hold of a copy of Kindred Spirit and have a read, and you'll see what I'm talking about. That's the kind of talking, the language genre of that kind of thing that you want to stay away from. So that's level 3. And really at level 3, the words, the meaning and stuff is completely irrelevant. What's really important is that you can execute the technique without thinking. Yeah. And again, with everything else.
Right, got you. Yeah. That's what I was getting at. Got you.
And you want to be able to execute a variety of technique without thinking. And each one of these things is a technique. And in a way, it's spirit dance because your body is doing slightly different things in executing these characters. And again, your Amska level technique will give you an awareness of what that is. So that's the idea. Because remember, Amska extends into the Butchig. Yeah, it extends in there. So and isn't that interesting? Butchig and Bitchig in Mongol, those two words sound so similar to each other. Dance and writing. Yeah. And their traditional writing system, I don't mean the Cyrillic, that they picked up off the Russians, but their traditional writing system, it looks so much like dance. It's not real. It's like the most shamanic writing system I've ever seen. So use that, that would be wonderful. It is quite difficult, but maybe worth the effort. I mean, one of the difficult things with Mongol that Theban doesn't have is something you'd have to come over is that the same sound at the start of a word, end in a word, and in the middle of a word is written with a different shape, with different characters, depending on whether it comes at the start of a word, middle of a word, or end of a word. That's a complexity that you really don't need in your life if you're trying to do automatic writing. But obviously, if you're a native Mongol, it's probably not so much of a problem. But Theban doesn't have that problem. The characters are written exactly the same way, no matter where they occur in a word. And then you have to decide which direction you're going to write in. We're all used to writing left to right, so that's probably a dreadful direction to be writing in. Top to bottom, bottom to top, right to left, or round in a circle, It's a triangle, whatever, whatever comes out. But, you don't necessarily always have to write in the same direction. But what I would say is that, just like with your dance technique, if you're incorporating spirit animals into your dance, your bear movements should be recognizable as bear. Your horse movement should be recognizable as horse. Your eagle should be recognized as eagle, and so on. Well, your characters should be recognized as characters. It shouldn't be like some random squiggle that when the kids lie on their back on the ground and they look at clouds and they see faces in the clouds. That's not how automatic writing works. They should be recognizable as what they are. And as I said, the thousands and thousands of characters that Miki wrote in her writings, there were nothing illegible, no mistakes, nothing, despite, and it's quite remarkable the speed that she was said to have written these things at. Automatic writing is done at high speed, incidentally, generally, faster than you would write normally. And there's no errors of that type anywhere. Is a testament to the strength of her technique. So that's what way to think about it. And then these things need to flow one into the other. So where is the guruk made? Well, the guruk is made through the tip of that writing brush, but the tip of the writing brush is propelled by the changes within your physical chalice, within within your roundness, if you like, the roundness of your structure that you're making with your body. And so I'm doing the Theban writing now. Amazing, I can still remember it. So that's good. And you don't want to just sit there writing with your hand and your wrist. You want it propelled out of your whole body, even from your legs. You want the whole body propelling that brush. And then as you swatch from the A to the B to the B to the A, 3 B's, 2 A's, you'll see the weave appearing through your body, the gurukh. Do you follow what I mean? You'll see that weave starting to occur through your physical chillicity, the energy changes that are going on in your physical chillicity. And as you're switching between the different characters that you'll start to see the spirals, and you'll start to see the energy changes that we've reviewed briefly. I mean, we've done some of them briefly, but we're going to go into a lot more depth on our series on level 4. Yeah. On each one, and many others as well. But you'll see those energy changes. I mean, Amscad level C, not baseline analysis level C. You'll see those things emerging. And so level 3 will naturally lead into level 4. And so you now see that what's going down on the paper is representative of the weave, but it's not where the weave is. The weave is in your body. The weave is in the environment. The weave is going through the brush, through your body, through the tip of the brush into the paper. And the tip of the brush is where the weave is kind of the thread on the weave, the main thread on the weave. But it's not what's going down on the paper. It's literally the tip of the brush. What's going down on the paper is a record of part of the weave that gave rise to that, but not all of it. Does that make sense? And so in a way, you can see that automatic writing, it's not what comes out on the paper is not necessarily the main part of it. It's the dance of your body and the interplay through the tip of the brush. We talked about the episode we talked about shamanic staff, using a staff for shamanism. And we said, staff body, or, like one person, and is the staff leading or is the person leading? We said, well, should sort of have the sense that the staff is leading the person, not the person leading the staff in the dance. Same here. The person is not leading. The tip of the writing brush is leading the person, not the other way around. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. And it's like what I said earlier. I'm kind of going back on a bit because I was talking about how writing is quite baseline, but you can't get away from it being physical, can you, at all? It's like if it's genuine shamanic technique, you are going to be off that baseline. You're going to be on the midline, and that physicality has got to come through.
Yeah. And so as you create that weave, so you're creating a weave in the same kind of way, although it's going to be a more compact weave if you just sat there writing. Yeah. But if you're not engaged at all, there's not going to be any weave. If you're just writing down what your imaginary friend is telling you with your hand, then, in my opinion, your whole self needs to be engaged in this. It's a very animated thing. The weave that you create will, in the same way as any other weave that you create in spirit dance or with drum technique or whatever, will start. It's a weave of energy patterns, ideally quite complex. That's another thing with Theban shapes. They send you all over the place while you're creating those shapes. I really like Theban. And the fact that they send you all over the space creates different eddies and whirls, but they can still be done in a kind of continuous kind of way. The point is that weave then starts to interact with the weave, the gurukh, that's already in the environment. And because the tip of the writing brush or the tip of the pen or whatever it is leading and you're not, that will then start to interact with your weave, the weave that you're creating, your radar for nature, if you like. And then what the tip of the writing brush is recording will be influenced both by the weave that you've created, but also by the weave of the environment or context in which you find yourself. And so this is why it's the tip of the writing brush. It's not the writer. We talk about the great writers, don't we? If you think of people, Thomas Hardy and co, and I'm not saying they're not great writers. Some of the stuff they produce is amazing. But Charles Dickens and all these sort of people. But in shamanic terms, it wouldn't be great writers. It'd be great tips of writing brushes or pens. Yeah. The greatness comes out of the interaction between the weave of nature and your weave, which should become one ideally in the end. That's what level 4 is all about, is getting this Guruk established. And all the things we've said about Guruk for spirit dance also apply here. All of the changes we've talked about, we won't go back over them again because we're doing them in the context of spirit dance. All of those changes apply to the weave that you're doing in the automatic writing. And then
the spirals,
all of that stuff, cycles, spirals, support, compression, expansion, all that kind of stuff is in there. The next thing that's going to happen is the places where you've probably, if you've been listening to all the episodes so far, you probably know what's going to happen next. The places where the weave and the environment and your weave intersect with each other, they're going to become enhanced within the automatic writing. They're going to become more prominent over time as you practice, as you do your thousands of hours of practice. And they're going to start to become the dominant thing. And then all of a sudden, maybe, or gradually, step by step, the Modoc will come out. It will appear. And you're going to slip onto the Modoc in no different a way than you slip onto Modoc in spirit dance. It's going to be exactly the same. So, and then, when we got all the stuff with the journey that we haven't talked about yet. We haven't really talked about the Modoc yet, but you can see how it goes exactly the same way as spirit dance, but it's automatic writing, it's not spirit dance. And the journey is an interesting one with automatic writing, but the thing you've got to understand in terms of what comes out is that what's written is not necessarily a record of the journey. Just like any other journey, the journey needs to be directed. What comes out is what gave rise to the weave and the Modoc that facilitated the journey, but it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the journey itself. That's like saying, if you hand over some people to, detailed plans for a radio, how to build a radio with electronics, it tells them how to build a radio, circuit diagrams and stuff like that, but it doesn't tell them what was played on the radio. Do you follow what I mean? And so to a certain extent, it doesn't matter what comes out on the paper, though it can give some indication. But as I said, we're coming on to level 6. If you do your ILAL well, you don't need to look at that paper afterwards and do a baseline analysis and say, what does it mean? What does this thing that I wrote down mean? You don't need to do that. There's absolutely no reason, because you will be super clear about the outcome of the journey if you do it well. So why would you need to look at the paper?
And Nakayama Miki's writings were also, in an objective sense, beautiful, right? And they made sense. They were cohesive. It's like,
that's because of the level 7, though, mate. That's because of the level 7. So what it is at level 7, the Nechdel, a gross oversimplification of what it is at level 7 is that as you do your shamanic practice, certain things hang with you. And there's also, what is the point of shamanism? The point of shamanism is to do what Miki did. She didn't do anything for herself. She was part of a community, and all of her efforts were directed towards supporting and nurturing that community, which she did an astonishingly good job of, it has to be said, in very difficult circumstances. But that was what her shamanism was all about. There's the famous story about, this is when she was in a late life, 70s or 80s. The headmen of the village, Shuyashiki village, they got together because there was a village up in the mountains that had a drought. They had a shortage of water. And so they got together to have one of their sort of village's elders meetings to decide what they were going to do to get water up to this village up in the mountains. And somebody said, well, where's Miki? Miki used to attend all of these village elder meetings. Obviously, she was a village elder herself, And somebody said, "Where's Mickey? She's not here." And somebody said, "Oh, she's off up the hill with a big barrel of water on her back." She was not a person for deliberation, So she was definitely an action woman, The issue here is that Nechdel is about support and nurture. So the automatic writings that we have from Miki are from an incredibly advanced, high-level, powerful, what people would describe as a great shaman, who, you can often tell the great shamans because they go around asking people to test them, which is certainly, if you read the story of her life, it's like, go and test me. And that she doesn't know what the test is going to be to start off with either, So the Nechdel level automatic writings that she did were very much for the benefit of her community. They were trying to convey to her close, not necessarily for the whole community around her that she was supporting. It did become quite a big community in the end. But for her close disciples, students, whatever you want to call them, apprentices, shamanic apprentices, she was trying to convey in words through the technique of automatic writing, but it's sort of like she did a spirit journey, and the question of the spirit journey was, how do I convey this stuff in a form that's going to outlive me, that my students, my apprentices can gain some benefit from, that's going to help them on their paths to become shamans, not help me, but their paths to become shamans. And that was the context in which Miki's, the surviving later life, automatic writings of Miki were constructed in. They're kind of a manual created through automatic writing. Incredibly impressive feat. They are almost a direct equivalent of the chemical wedding, but they're done in a shamanic way and not in an esoteric way. And very useful. But I always put the caveat that the worst translations, English for people who are English speakers, and even for people who are Japanese speakers, the worst translations and interpretations that I've ever seen of any work in my life are pretty much that. The stuff that exists around the Afudisaki. And there are many people who have recognized that through the years. And like I said, maybe on the patrons area sometime I'm going to do a podcast about what happened with Miki's tradition and talk about people like Onishi Aijiro and people like that. And really, long story short, there was a disagreement about whether her tradition should remain shamanic or should simply have a shamanic beginning and then an exoteric future, or whether it should remain shamanic. Yeah.
Well, that was something that was discussed. Because I thought that would be just something that happens naturally anyway, rather than somebody sitting in a committee meeting going, we should make this religion exoteric.
It was rather the other way around. Those people who, I'll go into detail. I don't want to go into detail on the main podcast, but those people who thought it should remain esoteric, should remain shamanistic, made themselves very unpopular. That's probably the best way to put it. And some of them went off and did their own thing. They went off and did their own thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are there any translations that are good, that are worth reading?
The one that I'm putting into, adequate. The one that I'm putting into the patrons area is the one that I did with my teacher, Kato Ichi, a gentleman who spent his entire life studying this stuff. And he lived a long life. So yeah, it's a very special translation. I've put the first one in. The interpretation will be appearing quite shortly of the first. What I'm doing is I'm putting the translation of part of it. There's a lot of it in, and then I'm going to do an explanatory episode, and then I'm going to put in another chunk of her writings and go like that. And this is for the $7 patrons. Because it's basically much the only thing they get extra compared to the $5 patrons. So I think that should be, not like I said, not that I begrudge it to anybody. We'll make it available to everybody eventually. but it is a very special translation. And
I think it would be useful, because if it reflects anything like our sessions that we had after our Tenrikyo sessions, that was like, other than going out and doing the stuff back in the day and actually getting started that way, that was the other side of it for me, and gradually sort of opened the door more for me and got me more, oh, okay, yeah, this makes sense, it's good stuff.
But just to be clear,
so I think that could be helpful for people.
Just to be clear, I'm not talking about Tenrikyo at all.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about Miki's tradition.
Yeah,
which is something very, very different from Tenrikyo. Tenrikyo is a religious tradition that descended from Miki, as did many others. But when I talk about Miki, I'm talking about the shamaness herself and the things that she did. I'm not talking about anything to do with Tenrikyo.
So we can be pretty sure, and I'm sure you feel this way, that Miki wrote the Ofudasaki in a shamanic state. What's your opinion about lots of, or the other great works like Rumi's Masnavi or Khalil Gibran, the various other quote unquote esoteric texts out there? Do you have any ideas about those, or is there a way to, I don't know, tell if they were written in a shamanic state, or is that just, I mean, it's a baseline question, I guess, but something
if they are, as the Chemical Wedding is, and as Miki's Ofudasaki, remember there were many Ofudasakis, as Miki's Ofudasaki is, if there were a fairly clear manual of how to be a shaman, and they correspond with, I mean, for instance, Miki's stuff corresponds very, very closely with Chemical Wedding, which is written half a world away in a very different period of time, in a very different context, and a very massively different zeitgeist, and yet they are so similar to each other in their essence, then you, and they correspond to the reality of shamanic practice and technique, then you can have a fairly decent level of confidence that there's maybe something of value in there. But
there's no way to know, is there?
Behind. It's what lies. Well, there is a way to know. That's my point. The way to know is, does the person who created this clearly understand shamanism? Yes or no? Yeah. There's a way to know.
So you would say the Chemical Wedding was likely written from a automatic writing shamanic perspective then?
It was definitely written from a shamanic perspective, whether it was automatic or writing or not. If it was automatic writing, oh my goodness, then that is the greatest work of world literature ever. Because how to produce something like that in automatic writing, I hate to think how good somebody would have to be in automatic writing to do that. There's no doubt that Miki's stuff was produced as automatic writing because people saw her doing it. So, she's only 19th century. There's loads of contemporary records. Multiple people saw her doing it. So it's not like, there's any doubt over that. So, and we have the actual, we have the originals. Yeah. So, so we know what came out of that.
One last question. So clearly it's a different thing when, say, a great author would sit there and write a great work of art, whether it's fiction, whether it's non-fiction or anything like that. But if that author was to say, I lost track of time, I was in my own world, and just this work came out of me down onto the paper, that's one thing they could say. But would you say that that's chillicity at play, and that's it? Because they
aspects of chillicity, yeah. But use generally not all aspects of chillicity, otherwise it would be shamanic. Yeah. Don't get me wrong, I like a good story, especially since Daniel Defoe sort of invented the happy ending in the Western tradition. I do like happy endings. I'm a big fan of Daniel Defoe. But there's no way he was a shaman. Not in a million years.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean he wasn't a cool guy, and he was good at what he did. But I just see that as a different thing. I see it as something completely different from shamanism.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just trying to make that distinction between what would be considered a work of shamanic writing and a great work of art. And I keep bringing it up, but it's like
at the end, if you think of the aspects of chillicity, you've got the Bat, Tosheltine, and Guchach. Those great artists, no matter what their discipline is, they exhibit a lot of Guchach.
Yeah.
Some of them exhibit a lot of Tosheltine. Leonardo da Vinci is a great example of that. Very few of them exhibit much Bat, generally, in what they were doing. And the Bat is the thing that stops the miasma affecting your activity. Yeah, so the main thing, the Brochikatate. So that would be my thing. We've talked about sportsmen as well, haven't we? Elite sportsmen show those same aspects. Yeah, those same aspects generally. And musicians and stuff like that. Yeah. So generally great artists will exhibit some aspects of chelicity, but very rarely all. I think we talked about Jimi Hendrix, didn't we?
We did.
Yeah, and
this is we explored this, I think, in how the 7 stages of shamanism part 1 a few episodes ago. I think it was that one.
What I would ask people to do is hang fire on this. I know we want to. There's a desire that we've done it on this episode and we did it on others. There's a desire for us to jump ahead, and we brush over massive subjects. We brush over Gurukh, massive subject. And as soon as we start talking about summarizing Modoc, Ailal, and Nechdel, one of my teachers said to me years ago, do you know, not understanding is a much better place to be in than misunderstanding. And that's pretty much great advice for life. And as soon as ever you try to give an overview of colossal areas of life and the universe, Modoc, Ailal, Nechdel, you immediately misrepresent through gross oversimplification. Yeah. And now what we want to do on this podcast is try to represent those things properly. So what I would like to say is that anything we've said up to date about Bhaktamse Sahib, Amska, Butchig, and a little bit of stuff we started off on Gurukh, then okay. Please try not to read anything into anything that we've said about Modoc, Ailal, and Nechdel until we get there. That would be my request to our
and
listeners.
We're in no rush. We're in no
patrons.
rush to get there. We're well on with stage 4, and like you say, there's another God knows how many episodes to come on that one. So
yeah. I was thinking about stage 4 the other day. We could do it forever. We could literally do it forever. But we won't.
But also, by oversimplifying things, you run the risk of somebody coming away thinking they understand it, and then
that's the problem.
Becoming very sure of themselves.
And just using the term
that.
Yeah, and just using the term spirit journey and spirit animal immediately gives rise to misunderstanding. Like I say,
what was that magazine? What was that magazine you said?
Kindred Spirits.
Kindred Spirit will be full of spirit animals.
Believe it or not, when you read it, you may find this difficult to believe. I did actually have a subscription at one point in time, many years ago. What I will do for my shamanism.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Okay.
I can imagine back in the day you with a subscription to Kindred Spirit. As you're beating the crap out of people around you.
It's not that I ever sort of liked it or anything. I just thought that it would help me understand the world and help me. But what I was thinking about a lot. You remember we talked about Amabella, and how to use language to help native language, in our case English, to help people understand shamanism and esotericism without doing too much misrepresentation through the accidental introduction of cultural baggage. We did a lot of work on that. But so me reading Kindred Spirit was part of that effort. I was trying to look at the language that people were using to talk about spirituality, shamanism, esotericism, and other related topics. Hermeticism and, Rosicrucianism, all this type of stuff. I tried to look at the language that people were actually using in order to help with the process of trying to figure out how to use words that didn't carry loads of cultural baggage. And it was through this process that we ended up with words like chelicity. It was out of my, partly, not entirely, out of my Kindred Spirit subscription that we ended up with terms like chelicity and neoteny and all that sort of thing. Yeah. Yeah.
I still think for as far as the English language goes, what we did in Armabella, or what I played a very small part in it, but what you and others did, it just gives that flavour so well, and it does get the ideas across much better.
Timely. It's timely. In 100 years' time or 50 years' time, somebody's going to have to do all that work all over again. Because it has to be customized to the zeitgeist of the times. Because you have to compensate. It's not just a matter of, the cup is not empty when you're talking about the miasma. People don't approach shamanism or esotericism with an empty cup. Usually they're coming with a very full cup, filled, among other things, by kindred spirit. Sorry, kindred spirit. But, as I said, I used to be a subscriber. There were things about the magazine that I liked. The issue is that the approach is key. In a shamanic society, it doesn't matter, right? You're in a highly animistic society. Everybody understands shamanism. They don't understand how to do it. The shamans understand that. But generally, everybody in an animistic society understands the context of shamanism within their society. That is not true in a settled, civilized society with a heavily established miasma, heavily established, asking about Sufism and stuff like that, with a heavily established religious tradition. That it gets much, much harder. And that was what the Rosicrucians, of which, Chemical Wedding's an example of that tradition, were up against. In a way, it's much harder for people like, and Miki was up against that as well to a certain extent. It's much harder in that context than it is in a true animistic society, because there's a lot of things that just don't need to be counterbalanced. Yeah. So for instance, I'll give you an example of translation from Miki's writings. She would use the term oya to explain which means kind of parent in Japanese, to explain the relationship between the universe, or the underlying spirit, or the underlying principle of the universe, and human beings. The universe, to a certain extent, is our parent, our spiritual parent, which is great. Yeah, that's quite understandable. The creation of the universe, the Big Bang, or whatever you want to call it, the things that the eight trigrams in the beginning interacting with each other, and then the echoes coming down through the generations, all this great ongoing morphing pattern of energy change through the generations, coming down and resulting in us. That aspect from the beginning expands outwards and kind of influences, but it's who we are and what we are. It gave rise to us, and we can understand ourselves better through it by examining it being nature and the underlying things that underlie nature. I talked about a shaman being like a mechanic who wants to understand how the engine works inside Mother Nature. That nature is our parent, and that's why Miki said, oh yeah. But how did that get translated into English? That got translated into English as God the parent. Yeah. There's the English translation. Yeah. Well, now we have God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit, and God the Parent.
God the Parent.
Instead of a trinity, we now have a quadrology or something. And do you see what I mean? If nobody had ever heard God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit, maybe that would have been an okay translation. But as it was dire, absolutely dire, because not only is it carrying cultural baggage along with it, the translation, but also it's fitting itself into a pre-existing miasmatic model that's very strong in the West. Few things are stronger in the West than the Trinity, right? In terms of miasmatic model. So, and it's fitting it in as the fourth element, So,
well, it was originally translated by Christians as well, wasn't it?
They had a lot of help. Anyway, that's going to be a Patrons Only episode, because I said I have many friends in that tradition who've been very good to me over the years. Upsetting them is something that I have done. I apologize to any who may be listening. It's not my intention. And any stuff, if I will do an episode, I've done a bit of preparation on an episode that will be in the Patrons area and will be available to $5 patrons as well, that one. talking about what happened to Mickey's tradition. Not to pick on Mickey's tradition. First of all, I know a lot about it. And she was a great shaman, not just a regular everyday shaman. She could do all she could do a lot of the fantastic stuff that people expect great shamans to be able to do. I'll talk a bit about that, but also as a model for how shamanism gets turned into exotericism over time in all over the world at all points in time, and how that happens. Yeah, so that's my idea. And I do have some notes sort of planned out for that one. But the first thing I've got to get out is the interpretation of the first part of her on-mic writings, which I'm going to do. Not interpretation, explanation. They don't need interpreting because they're actually pretty clear.
Yeah. Ah, well, as I remember, they were very, very interesting to listen to. Mm-hmm. Should we call it a day there, Damon?
Yeah, let's do it. But just quick shout out to the awesome patrons. Love you guys. You keep us going. And it's just wonderful to have you. I feel so blessed that we have a crowd of people around us who are pushing this thing forwards. I actually feel the energy of those people. And, where, as you can see, the results of our crowd of patrons, because all the other listeners can thank the patrons, because the reason we've had this push to get more episodes out, as you see we've been doing, is partly because we see the efforts that the patrons are putting in, and it's a bit embarrassing if the patrons are putting in sterling efforts and we're not. So this is the ordinary listeners can thank patrons for the episodes that are coming out.
Yeah, and you can go to patreon.com/wovenenergy and you can join up there and support us over there. And one thing I will say is we will be doing periodic Q&A episodes, and so we would love to open the floor to patrons to be able to ask us questions, and we'll answer it on the podcast. So we can definitely
we're going to do that soon.
Yeah. Well, we need some questions first, but yeah.
I think we got a ton, to be honest. We can go through the discussion group. I'm sure we could pull some out. The thing is, the discussion group's been quite healthy over the years. And there's an awful lot of content in there, but we can we'll book aside a session and we'll troll through it and make a questions episode.
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. But like I said, if you become a patron, there will be a chance for you to ask your questions as well. So it would be fantastic to welcome you in there. Okay, thank you so much for listening. And as always, if you can give us an honest review on your podcast app of choice, that would be fantastic. It helps us get this podcast in front of more people as well. Just think about anybody you know. Maybe you could just mention it to them if you think they're going to be interested. That would also be really helpful as well. We'll spread it by word of mouth. And again, thanks for listening, and we will see you in the next one.
Thanks a lot, guys.